It was a weekday night, and my brother and I were just about to sleep, browsing the early internet. We were both in our own worlds, chatting with friends and scrolling through our social media. That's when I stumbled upon a post suggesting that if I put my hands on my back and fell asleep that way, I could manually enter sleep paralysis and trigger that specific phenomenon by just performing the action before sleeping. As a young man, I was curious if this was true, as I didn't really believe it was possible just by doing that exact thing. I knew at the time that sleep paralysis could only occur when you're stressed or very tired. I was neither of those conditions that night, so I didn't really think I'd be able to achieve sleep paralysis just by putting my hands on my back as I slept. So my brother and I stopped browsing social media and shut off our phones. We started playing the night radio at that time. We both enjoyed listening to the radio as we slept, hearing the radio personalities and the songs they were playing. Then I tried the suggested action I saw online. I placed my hands on my back as I fell asleep, but then the impossible happened in my mind. Before I knew it, I had entered sleep paralysis. At first, I thought it was cool that I managed to enter this phase just by performing the action. I was like, that post I saw earlier was right, cool. But then the inevitable happened. I was under sleep paralysis, therefore I couldn't move. The reason I couldn't move was that my hands were actually on my back, and I couldn't move them or do anything with them as I just watched my surroundings. I could see the shelves above me, the drawer on the other side of the room, and my brother lying beside me facing the other way. I could even hear the radio playing during this time, as if I were fully aware while I was actually asleep. Then the horror began as some dark figures started appearing. At first, one was at the top of the shelf looking down at me. Then there was another figure by the side of the drawer. Finally, when I faced forward, there was another one right in my face. I screamed, but my screams made no sound at all. I screamed and screamed, trying to regain full control of my arms, but it was no use. I couldn't move them, and the dark figure in front of me wasn't leaving. I closed my eyes for a moment. Then, when I opened them again, the figures were gone. I called for my brother, who was facing away from me, but again I couldn't make a sound. By then, I realized I was still in sleep paralysis, but I didn't care at the time. I just kept on screaming in agony as the radio continued playing by my head. I kept on screaming for help and calling for my brother. I still couldn't move my arms. I couldn't move at all. I was scared that the figures might return, and screaming at my brother seemed the only rational thing to do at the time, but to no avail. My brother couldn't hear me as I couldn't produce any voice, so I screamed and screamed louder than before. But then a sudden snap happened. As I was screaming as loud as I could, I suddenly could make noise, and my brother heard my screams. But as he turned to me slowly, the terror in my mind was so agonizing that I couldn't even imagine what kind of scolding I'd get for screaming in the deep hours of the night. But that thought quickly faded as he turned around. I saw a gory face that was not my brother's. His face was all twisted and skinned, and his eyes were bulging out. It was very scary to look at him. Then I started screaming for help, as that thing beside me was not my brother at all. The only salvation I had at that time was a mere illusion I had made in my mind that was not my brother at all. After the screaming, The rest faded from my memory. When I woke up, the radio was playing the same song as it was in that nightmare, so I knew I was aware and my mind was awake during that time. So I never dared to try that method of entering sleep paralysis again. I was not brave enough to experience that horror again. The helplessness, the agony, and the anxiety that dream gave me was not something I wanted to experience again. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you again next week.